Ethan Wells had worked as a flight attendant for 7 years. To most, he was just another friendly face serving coffee 30,000 feet above the earth. But beneath his calm smile and neat uniform was a man carrying the quiet ache of unfinished dreams. Once, he had trained to be a pilot. He had sat in simulators, memorized checklists, and learned to love the hum of turbines. But life had a way of rerouting plans. When his mother fell ill, flight school became too expensive. So, he traded his wings for an apron, promising himself he'd return to the cockpit one day. That day never came, or so he thought. It was Flight 227 to Seattle. Clear skies, smooth air, full cabin. The captain, a veteran named checking belts and trays. He liked this part of the job, the rhythm, the order, the quiet conversations with strangers on their way somewhere new. Somewhere between the laughter and the soft hum of the engines, fate began to whisper. A flicker of unease moved through Ethan's chest, something he couldn't name. The captain's door remained closed as usual, the first officer's voice barely audible through the cockpit wall. Routine. Ordinary. Safe. Until the sound of something heavy crashing inside shattered that illusion. A cry for help followed. The intercom cut abruptly. Silence. Then panic. The head attendant turned to Ethan, pale as paper. "The captain's down," she said, breathless. "He's not responding." Ethan froze, the tray slipping from his hand, cups scattering across the floor. Somewhere deep inside, something old, something pilot, awoke. The cockpit door was sealed, unyielding, locked under protocol. Ethan's pulse thundered in his ears as he and the head attendant pounded on it. "First officer, open up!" The muffled response came shaky, terrified. "The captain's unconscious. I'm trying to regain control." The plane dipped slightly, a slow roll that drew gasps from passengers. Overhead bins rattled. A child cried out. The cabin, moments ago filled with calm chatter, now throbbed with fear. Ethan grabbed the intercom, his voice trembling but controlled. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated. Everything's under control." It wasn't, but he knew panic would spread like fire if he didn't hold it together. His training as a flight attendant kicked in, calm voice, steady movements, reassured the crowd. Inside, though, his pilot instincts roared awake. He remembered every switch, every control layout, every phrase from his training. The captain's life, and everyone else's, depended on what happened next. The first officer finally unlocked the cockpit, his face drenched in sweat. Ethan stepped inside and froze. Captain Harris was slumped sideways, headset dangling, skin pale as ash. The autopilot light blinked, but the plane was veering slightly off course. The first officer's hands shook as he tried to stabilize the controls. I can't do this alone," he whispered. Ethan's breath hitched. "You're not alone," he said quietly. His hands hovered over the instruments, muscle memory awakening like an old friend. The first officer looked at him, realization dawning. "You've flown before." Ethan nodded once. "A long time ago." Outside, clouds began to darken, a storm brewing on the horizon. Inside, the air grew heavier. Ethan took the co-pilot seat for the first time in years. The headset felt strange, familiar, sacred. "Tell me what you need," he said. "We're getting him home." The storm hit faster than forecast. Thunder rolled across the sky, lightning streaking through the clouds like cracks in glass. The aircraft trembled violently, trays and luggage rattling. Passengers screamed as oxygen masks dangled. Ethan gripped the yoke, steadying his breathing. "Come on, stay with me," he muttered. The first officer fought beside him, flipping switches, calling out readings. "Autopilot disengaged. Altitude unstable." Ethan's mind raced. He remembered the drills from years ago, the rhythm of crisis, the cold clarity of fear. "Pitch down 2 degrees," he said firmly. "Level with the horizon." The first officer obeyed. The plane steadied for a moment, but turbulence slammed again, harder this time. Outside the windshield, the world was white fury. Inside, heartbeats replaced silence. In the cabin, the crew fought to calm passengers. The head attendant's voice cracked over the intercom. "Please remain seated and fasten your belts." Ethan could hear the sobs through the door. He felt every one of them. Lightning flashed again, illuminating the captain's still form. Ethan's throat tightened. "We need to divert," he said. "Nearest airfield." The first officer nodded shakily, adjusting the radio, static hissing through the frequency. "No contact, storm interference." Ethan clenched his jaw. "Then we'll do this the old way." His fingers moved instinctively across the controls. Outside, the horizon flickered with light and shadow, chaos and beauty. For the first time in years, he felt alive, terrified, yes, but alive. The first officer glanced at him. "How do you remember all this?" Ethan almost smiled through the fear. "You don't forget how to breathe." The plane tilted left. He corrected it smoothly, his voice calm now. "We're not going down today." Lightning cracked again, painting his face in silver light. The pilot in him had returned, and he wasn't letting go. Minutes felt like hours. The storm showed no mercy. The first officer struggled to stabilize the plane's descent, sweat dripping into his eyes. "We're losing altitude," he gasped. Ethan scanned the instruments. "Thrust steady. Don't fight the wind, feel it." His tone changed, commanding, grounded. The voice of a man who had once believed the sky was home. In the cabin, fear spread like wildfire. A mother whispered prayers. A man clutched his seat as if it could save him. The head attendant moved through the aisle, reassuring passengers with words she didn't believe. She looked toward the cockpit door and whispered, "Please, Ethan." Inside, Ethan fought the old ghost of failure. Years ago, he'd quit aviation because he believed he wasn't good enough. Now 100 souls waited for proof that he was wrong. The radar blinked erratically. The first officer muttered coordinates. "We're near an alternate strip, but the visibility's terrible." Ethan's pulse steadied. "We'll find it. Trust the instruments." "Trust me." The younger pilot hesitated, then nodded. The plane rocked again, lightning illuminating their faces. In that moment, Ethan saw his reflection in the windshield, not the attendant serving coffee, but the man who once dreamed of commanding the sky. Static buzzed through the radio. "Flight 227, do you copy?" Ethan grabbed the mic. "Seattle Control, this is Flight 227. Captain incapacitated. Request emergency landing clearance." The reply came faint through the noise. "Copy, Flight 227. You're cleared to divert. Follow beacon 23 north." Ethan exhaled, tension breaking slightly. "We've got our light," he said softly. The first officer turned to him. "How did you stay calm?" Ethan's gaze stayed on the clouds. "Because someone has to be." And for the first time in years he believed it. The storm began to thin, the angry clouds parting just enough to reveal streaks of fading sunlight. The plane descended through layers of mist, every creak of metal echoing through the cabin like a heartbeat. "Landing gear ready," the first officer announced. Ethan nodded, his eyes locked on the faint glow of runway lights flickering through the haze. "Flaps down? Steady at 180. The passengers clung to their seats, silent now, hope and fear balanced on a thread. The captain remained unconscious, his breathing shallow but steady. Ethan stole a glance at him. "Hang in there, sir," he whispered, then returned to the controls. "Runway visual confirmed," the first officer said, voice trembling. "Good," Ethan replied. "Then let's go home." The descent was rough. Crosswinds tugged at the wings, alarms chirping in protest. The aircraft tilted, dipping dangerously before Ethan corrected it with precision. "Stay with me," he murmured, coaxing the plane like a living thing. "You've got this." The ground rushed closer. The first officer's knuckles widened. "Too fast." Ethan adjusted the throttle, feeling the weight of 200 eyes behind him. "No," he said quietly. "Just right." The wheels hit the runway, a violent, jarring impact, then bounced once, twice, before gripping solid ground. The cabin erupted in gasps, then cheers, then sobs. Ethan's hands shook as he guided the aircraft to a stop. Sirens flashed outside as emergency vehicles raced toward them. He pulled off his headset, exhaling a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. The first officer turned to him, eyes wide. "You just saved a plane full of people." Ethan looked back toward the cabin door, where the terrified faces were now filled with gratitude. "No," he said softly. "We saved each other." The passengers disembarked slowly, many stopping to thank him, some crying, others silent in awe. The storm had passed, leaving the world washed in gold. As emergency crews tended to Captain Harris, Ethan stood on the tarmac, the scent of rain heavy in the air. His hands still trembled from adrenaline. The head attendant approached him, tears in her eyes. "You were incredible," she whispered. "You weren't just a flight attendant up there." Ethan smiled faintly. "Maybe I never stopped being a pilot." Later, as the sun set behind the runway, he stood alone by the aircraft. The reflection of the fading light shimmered off its wings. He thought of his mother, of the sacrifices, of the dreams he'd tucked away to survive. But now, something inside him had shifted. He had faced the sky again, and it hadn't broken him. It had given him back his purpose. The airline would later issue a statement calling him a hero. But Ethan didn't feel like one. He felt like someone who had finally answered the call he'd been ignoring for years. A gentle wind passed, warm and forgiving. He looked up, watching another plane climb into the twilight. "See you up there," he whispered. For the first time in a long while, he didn't feel small beneath the sky. He felt infinite. Because courage, he realized, isn't about being fearless. It's about rising when the moment demands it. And that day, 30,000 feet above the earth, Ethan Wells didn't just save lives. He found his wings again.